2020. This is the Town of Halifax Finance Committee. We're being recorded by Area 58. On tonight's agenda, budgets, selectmen's budget, accountant's budget, acceptance of minutes, waterman grievance, executive session, waterman grievance, correspondence, public participation, calendar, and as may arise. So first, under budgets, just sort of a generic touching base. Just a reminder for folks, if you haven't yet had your liaison appointments with your department heads, make sure to reach out to them because all the budgets are now in. I know there's a couple I still have to do because there was some back and forth on them. But has anyone else had any trouble getting appointments or setting up appointments with their department heads?
I haven't had any trouble.
Okay.
But I haven't tried either.
So then you haven't had trouble.
The problem I'm going to have is the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually have a problem getting department heads to have the discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
I might have to just burn it to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, if there's daytime ones that I can, like, you want me to cover any of them, or if I can select, like, on days I'm not teaching, and if there's some that I can help out with, just let me know.
Take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that I met with some of the department heads on Saturdays too, so I know they've been flexible to
Okay.
accommodate where possible. Sandy, did you send out the budgets electronically recently? I know that you sent one back in early January.
Yeah, I haven't sent any recently.
I think you sent out the ones you got in. If you got late submissions, I know you sent like mine that were late submits.
Right. I
Um,
don't think I've gotten any late submissions, any more late submissions.
Alright, so the last one that you sent is still accurate? Back in January, early January?
Should be, yes.
That's one.
Selectmen's budget. I'll entertain a motion to table until Charlie Seelig is here to talk about it.
So,
Seconded.
Move to second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Accountant's budget.
Yep.
Sandy.
Okay. So my budget looks a little different this year.
Okay.
This
This one you can-
next fiscal year. And the main reason being that my assistant is retired. She plans to retire the end of May,
Okay.
and we need to replace her. So, what I've done, the accountant's clerical budget has gone down. Because I don't know who I'll be replacing her with, I did not figure that at step one. I figured it at a middle step. Because if I hire from within, and it's someone who's already in a grade 6, to bring them in, I'll have to go at a higher step than grade 1. Like step 1 for that position. So, my budget will drop about $6,000.
Okay.
But then my expense budget, I will be increasing
Okay.
because the person that I bring on, I'm going to have her do some schooling. She'll have to go, we'll both go to the March conference, but I'll also have her go to like the new finance, new financial officers conference at Holy Cross and 1 or 2 other classes.
Okay.
Just to help bring her up to speed as much as possible. So I
Okay.
wanted to increase my expense budget.
Okay.
That's just from the I will also be putting an article most likely on the special town meeting in annual, because I would like to hire the new person in April. So there'll be some overlap with the new and the current assistant, so that I can have, especially because May is town meeting and then it goes right into the close at the end of the year. I'd like to have as much overlap as I can. If I can get almost a month worth, that would be helpful to me. So I will probably need more money for, I think a little over $5,000, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
For the end of this year, it's ridiculous, yeah.
Anyone have any questions for Sandy?
The audit number stayed the same. We had a 3-year quote from the auditors, so that number is the same.
Okay. Are there any questions from anyone? Okay. Thank you, Sandy. So we can go to selectmen's budget, which we just tabled momentarily. So Charlie, would you like to talk about that?
I don't think it significantly changed one way or the other.
Okay.
I think there have been a couple of places where I've had to increase, given what costs are like right now, and try to balance that off with decreases. I did check back from 10 years ago, and our budget is still, that line item is still lower than it was 10 years ago. So, try to hold the line as low as we can.
Okay. So here's selectmen expense line. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the law line.
Yeah, I've given up. I kept hoping that we would get this back under relative control in the sense of that the overages, both for last year, and it's gonna be obvious by the end of the January bills, I'm gonna be in a deficit. There's no escaping it. We have one case that still is in litigation, and sort of the secondary effects of that case that I'm dealing with the planning board and the zoning board are taking up an extraordinary amount of legal time. So that, plus, I think we're just unfortunately figuring to be in a more litigious society that our overall costs are up tremendously versus where they were, let's say, 5 years ago. But on the other hand, I don't see a way of avoiding it in that I don't want the town to refuse to spend, let's say, a couple $100 on an attorney now to spend a couple $1,000 later on because we make a mistake. There are plenty of times when we have the expertise here in the building that we don't need to go to town council, but where we're dealing with matters that aren't that simple, both for union contracts and personnel matters, and then also for zoning. It's not using expertise that we have available to us is not even tiptoeing around minefield. It's basically knowing you're going to step on that landmine and it's going to go off. So I'd rather have the ability to tiptoe if necessary, but that costs a little bit more than just walking out there and hoping you don't step on anything.
Yeah.
So the number that I have in for fiscal '21 is more realistic given what we've spent so far this year and given what we spent last year.
Okay.
If the town says otherwise, we'll have some very difficult decisions to make. I think we're going to wind up not using the expertise we have available to us and making mistakes that are going to cost the town in the long run.
Do you feel comfortable with that number given what you've seen over the last 2 years, or do you still think? I know you said you're sort of looking at the
I think it's a
bills.
minimum.
Okay.
Like I said, the rate things are going, I'm going to spend the account out this month. I mean, the January bill's coming in February, I'm going to spend out. I have a hope that one of the matters we've been dealing with on the personnel side is going to end. We may talk about that later tonight, first in the executive session. The zoning matter that has taken up a huge amount of expense, I see no chance of it ending anytime soon. The parties involved are, don't see any, they seem to have adequate funds to just continue, even though, and unfortunately, the town needs to continue to defend itself in this matter because one of the parties is making claims against the town for misconduct and wants compensation for that. And the town's in disagreement about that.
Mm.
So I can't just roll over on that.
Yeah.
And if it was a purely zoning matter, where the two parties were disagreeing, not us per se, but a permit holder and a butter, okay, let them have it.
Yeah.
They can go to court and we'll sit on the sidelines and wait to see how things come out. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, the town's personally involved at this point,
Mhm.
so. I guess what I'm figuring actually is we're gonna get more lawsuits out of this.
Yeah.
So, lawsuit that got settled or got appealed, and
Yeah.
I think that one or more of the ZBA and planning board decisions are gonna get appealed, so we're gonna be back exactly where we've been.
Does anyone have questions on the law line before we go to something else?
Last, we had talked about perhaps rewriting all the zoning articles at one point,
Yeah.
and then making an investment in legal to do that. Is that still on the,
It's be a separate article for town meeting. I need to get a better estimate from our land use firm. We are working with them within the constraints of the budget to work on the multifamily issue, one that basically we passed over in November or October, when we had the town meeting. And that seems promising in the sense of, in fact, we're meeting with land use council, representatives of the various boards and such. We're meeting with land use council next week with the hope that we have something to bring to town meeting. It doesn't settle the other matters,
Right.
but it will be an improvement, and I think worth the investment we'll put in with land use council to, we'll see if town meeting is willing to make those changes. If they aren't, then we'll just let it sit.
Yeah.
But I think it will be worth it. I think the idea of revamping or revising the bylaw, basically Z, the zoning bylaw, is still worthwhile, but I see that as something that the town has to make a conscious decision because it's going to be a material amount of money, tens of thousands of dollars, to do something like that. And either the town will either see it as a priority and will be willing to spend the money, or it won't. And we'll live one way or the other.
Right.
But it can't be done out of the legal budget, even with the additional
Yeah.
amount of money.
Yeah.
okay.
On the town report, I remember you talking about an increase in the printing costs.
Well, what's happened is that for the town report itself, not the meeting warrant, that's not out to everybody, but we keep reducing the number of copies we make. And what it's done is that the first copy is always the most expensive copy. To put together the plates or the equivalent in the 21st century is very expensive, and then the second subsequent copies are fairly cheap. But it works out that we're spending about $24 per town report, copy of the town report, we only make 100 copies at this point. If we were looking for something to say, save a few $1,000s, I mean, out of a $26 million budget, it may not seem much, but we may be looking for a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there. If we end up doing that, that's one of the places to do it, and that we will still have a town report, it will get printed once, or a few copies on one of the printers, put it in a 3-ring binder, or you can go to Staples, and we may even have, I think, a binder here that can bind a copy.
Do we?
So-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So it can be, put on a shelf, it can be sent to the state library and such places that we're required to send a copy of the report.
That's what I was going to ask: is what's the minimum number that we have to meet statutory requirements?
I think, well, whatever it is, it's easy enough to print out. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
We don't need to spend thousands of dollars doing so.
Okay.
And I understand, the objection, I don't mean from this committee, and I
Yeah.
don't mean that from anybody in particular, but,
Yeah.
my knee-jerk, what do you mean we're not gonna have a town report? We're not gonna have, a booklet that we've done now for not hundreds of years, but, we have copies
Mhm.
from most of the century, 20th century sitting on shelves there. Well, it's unfortunately that it costs money to do that.
Mhm.
And if there are alternatives, both electronically, but also just making enough hard copies, it may be worth doing. We don't, I think one of the concerns when we stopped doing the distribution of the town report to everybody, which was during the last recession, there was a concern, well, people are gonna want copies of it. Well, turns out people don't really worry too much about, there might be 10 people who come in during the course of a year and say, I'd like to get a copy of the town report.
Mhm.
Okay, great, we'll print one out for you.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, okay. Anyone have questions about the town report line? Do you want to talk about data processing, or do we want to bring Caesar in when we talk about?
If we can wait.
Yeah, okay. One question just that came up from my conversation with Sue about COA was whether or not,
We're gonna have to add the software for,
not just the kiosk software, but that any other, like, of the hardwiring, or any other work over that might have to be done, would that be in Caesar's budget or in the COA?
hardwiring for what?
Potentially moving offices?
Okay, we should fund that separately.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually in, but
Just as
it
we
came up a
did-
conversation.
We've had, for instance, the cabling projects for the various municipal buildings,
Yeah.
were funded under a separate article.
Okay.
Something to that extent should be funded under a separate article.
Okay.
Shouldn't be funded, we don't have a lot of spare change.
Yeah.
We usually try and leave about $5,000 for Murphy to show up.
Yeah.
But if this is something we're expecting to do, then it should be budgeted
Yeah.
separately.
And I hadn't, this wasn't like a concrete plan or
Yeah.
anything, it was just a conversation about whether or not, like, depending on building remodeling and stuff like that, okay.
Yeah. If we're doing a remodeling building and we need to do rewiring for the computer network and such, then great, make it part of that article.
Yeah.
But yeah, the software for the kiosk will need to add to the TP budget, just like we do, whether it's the dog licensing or
Yeah.
the clerk or the cemetery software.
Yeah, because she folded into her expense line. Is there any other lines that you want to chat about with us? And does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Thank you, Charlie. We can look at the meeting minutes. Thank you, Linda, for typing these up. These are from Monday, February 3rd, 2020. Members present were Cheryl Zarella Burke, Drew McClincy, Melinda Tarsi, Bill McAvoy, and Fred McGovern. Whenever anyone's ready, I can entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from Monday, February 3rd, 2020.
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you again, Linda, for those. I'll entertain a motion to just move the two items concerning the Waterman grievance below as may arise, just so we can take care of the last little remaining pieces of housekeeping before we adjourn into executive session.
So moved.
Seconded.
Move and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll just deal, there was no correspondence other than the instructions on how to enter into executive session. So thank you for those. Public participation?
I just wanted to pick your brain up a little bit,
Mhm.
see what the likelihood of you guys recommending a town meeting for me to get the additional guy on my staff this year. I was looking to add a full-time guy, so it'd be a third full-time guy, not including myself, at a higher grade to basically be lead for a contractor that's gonna come in basically he's done working for himself,
Mhm.
and now we can do some bigger projects
Mhm.
that we don't have to pay prevailing wage for.
Mhm.
Um,
So,
we're just-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before we go through the hiring process,
Yeah.
to fill the part-time slot.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see what the likelihood is of that.
So as Scott's liaison, I met with him partly as his FinCom liaison, but also partly as a wage and personnel chair, to talk about the requests that had been put into wage and personnel. And one of the conversations we had was about whether or not the original proposal sort of met the parameters of what this new position would expect. So the petition or the that went into wage and personnel is in part a reflection of the conversation that we had about that budget item, but also about that wage and personnel item, which is where it gets weird. We're in the two hats. So wage and personnel has not yet met, just to keep everyone posted. Wage and personnel has not yet met since the open hearing to talk with any of the department heads about any position requests. So technically wage and personnel has no official recommendation or hasn't had a conversation about it yet. So that's where we are from the wage and personnel side of things. So we can talk about it from the financial side and looking at Scott's budget and thinking about, I know when he proposed the new position, I believe he talked about the sort of forfeiting the summer position and folding the that budget line item
Right.
into.
One of the two summer positions I give up,
Yeah.
and then the year-round part-time guy I give up.
So we can talk about that, like I said, from that side, but not so much the grading of the position and all that kind of stuff. Wage and personnel still hasn't had a conversation about that yet. So I can pull up. Let me find the. While I'm doing that, does anyone have any sort of on a philosophical level questions for Scott about hiring or the need for that? And then I'll tell you what line we're looking at.
Line 40, I believe. And he does have two entries in there.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if there might be some difference in between them, but
Okay.
there's one that's marked off.
So this one's the marked up one. Alright, and then there's alternate. So in both of our binders, there's an article line number 40, and then about 4 or 5 pages behind it, you'll see article 4, line number 40, alternate. And that one includes the additional employee. Or the, yeah. Paper clip this. So here's the version 1, and there's the alternate version 2. So if you want to flip back and forth between those. So I'll start off. Like I said, Wage hasn't made any recommendations, and I'm speaking just from the finance committee side right now. I appreciate that that you, Scott, showed how you would eliminate one position to help fund this additional one. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your need for that particular position at that particular grade, and what that would do if that person were to exist. How would that affect sort of day-to-day operations, or what can be accomplished?
Basically, it brings more skill to the department. We, as a group now, we can figure things out. There's some things we know how to do very well, some things not so much. This would just kind of broaden what we know and how to approach things. So a project, instead of figuring it out when you get into it, is someone that's fluent and they just go right through it. So a project that we could do before, we could still do it just in quicker time. Maybe handle more projects in the summer, instead of 1 or 2, maybe we get 4 done. And again, not paying prevailing wage, it just makes sense to not pay prevailing wage if we can avoid it. So that's basically it. We've got some mid-sized projects. We've got some siding to replace. That's gonna be too big for, not too big for our group, but when our group gets pulled in 5 different directions and there's 3 of us,
Mhm.
it doesn't work so well. So if I can assign this guy and 1 or 2 guys during the summer to a project, and then I work defense, and I keep them from getting interrupted,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's the way
Do you have an estimate of how much over like the last year or the last 2 years we've paid in payroll that is prevailing wage? So that like when we have to contract out for things that can't be handled in-house and have to pay prevailing wage?
I have not put
Okay.
that together. Just recently, we paid $750 to have 2 roofs repaired. And, I think the guy was there for 3 hours. So, right there was a pretty good bid, and we provided a good amount of material on that as well.
Okay.
So, it was no material issue.
Oh, okay. I think that might be some, and again, I'm just speaking as myself, I think something like that might be helpful, just like those data points to know, like maybe over fiscal year 19 and what you've spent so far, just even if it's ballpark, what you've spent paying out prevailing wage rates for items, for projects that you know that this position graded this way could handle. So we can just sort of see, in addition to some of the savings realized by getting rid of that part-time summer position, what other savings might be potentially realized if this was able to be done in-house.
Is the type of work that they take on more risky, requiring any new insurance or different insurance?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of you've got workers' comp covers workers' comp, so if you're asking because of injury, the workers' comp insurer might take a look at that sort of position later on when they're doing the payroll audit. But from what I've seen, the categories wide in the sense of you don't differentiate, as an example, among the highway employees, you don't differentiate among the water department employees. It's a set category that if you're working in a field position in the water department, your working rate is this per $100 of salary. It's not, for example, Keith Swanson is at, I'm making everything up, $2.20 per 100, and Sully is at $2.45. They don't differentiate to that granular detail.
Do you know roughly, off the top of your head, what we paid last year for the part-time help?
The part-time help.
I think it's,
No, between last year's budget and the proposed budget for the guy, I think it's a difference of just under 19,000. So yeah.
so in the first version,
Versus the alternate?
yeah, has what the part-time, it's broken out here what the part-time seasonal help would be.
Philosophically, I'm all for it, but I think we need to see
Yeah.
the whole budget before we can.
Yeah, it's gonna be the same thing as like last year where it comes
the whole
down
thing.
Yeah.
to the end where we have to we'll wait to the end.
And we're gonna,
So you want to see basically what we spent last year on outside contractor that this guy could cover, and projects coming up, potential savings,
yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah, and I think both for us and probably also for a town meeting, if you have a sense of like just like what you said before, like okay, if this person or this position could handle with another person this particular project, then that would leave you free to do X, Y, and Z, or you free to sort of buffer and ensure that those people are allowed to work uninterrupted, but you could still field these other things going on. I think that's helpful for people to sort of conceptualize the workflow a little bit. But yeah, philosophically, I'm not opposed to it at all, and I know that you've made requests previously, and that we have that institutional memory that you've raised the issue before of needing more help. So I think we're all certainly aware of that and want to acknowledge that you have made those requests in the past. I think we're all just sort of, at least my perception is waiting to see how things shake out with the school budget, because we've got the sort of the rest of the picture together minus that. And as it happens often, we're going to have to wait for that to see what we can tell other folks, even while we push back to try to make sure that they don't just get to sort of run over everybody else when, we know that people have been making requests for more than 1 year of things that they need.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think we've set the meeting schedules for wage and personnel. So there'll be a time for you to come in front of Gordon and I as the wage folks. And then I think we have an eye for wage and personnel to report out to FinCom at the end of March. But we'll keep everyone posted on those dates as well. But that'll be when I take the wage and personnel recommendations here, and then FinCom makes recommendations based on each of those articles too. All right, thank you very much, Scott. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Anybody else under public participation? Okay, calendar, just to review. I think we've set ourselves up for all of the Mondays that we can set ourselves up for. I-
Monday through March, except the 17th of February.
Yep. Okay.
So enjoy next Monday off, I guess.
Yep.
That's
And
it.
then it's it. I won't be here on the 9th. That's the only day. So if there's quorum, Bill will be in charge. And even if there's not and you still have meetings, we can still proceed and just use them as information gathering, and I'll just catch up with everyone the following week. Right. Anything under as may arise? Okay. So we'll go back to the Waterman grievance executive session. So I am going to entertain, or I guess I will make the motion to enter an executive session to discuss strategy for litigation without having a detrimental effect on the governing body's litigation. All subjects may be revealed without compromising the purpose for which the executive session was called. I stated whether we will adjourn from executive session or reconvene. So we will reconvene after the executive session. So we'll vote to come back into regular order. I've publicly stated that having a discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect. And we'll now go into a roll call vote into an executive session. So I will go off of the roll on the last meeting minutes. Cheryl Zarella Burke is not present. So again, this is a motion to take a roll call vote to go into executive session. If you vote yes, you're voting to go in executive session. If you vote no, you're voting not to. Okay, so Drew, do you vote to go into executive session or no?
Yes.
Okay. Bill McAvoy.
Yes.
Okay, Fred McGovern,
Yes.
and I'm Lena Tarsi, vote yes. All right, so we will adjourn into executive session, and then when we come out of executive session, we will cover the last remaining item on the agenda, and we'll come back out and grab folks from the hallway who may still be here.
You're gonna get a mix of both.
The elementary school budget was
This one,
discussed.
Yes.
But we didn't vote.
Okay.
So we closed the public hearing, nobody showed up. Closed it. So, we did ask the new superintendent, let's get it back.
Have you had any chance to talk about safer article? I mean, I know there's a small percent.
No,
You don't have the whole school moving over.
So-
It's a small.
They did present a chart of the kids that go to middle school and private school.
Right.
Elementary school, I want to say it was like 3 kids. The elementary school part said it was not closing.
It's not. It's only. It's K through 8 staying. It's just the 9th. So it's anybody that's coming over from 8th to 9th, 10th to
Yeah.
It's the 8th graders to the juniors that they don't have any place to go. So I know some kids that go there that live in Halifax and Kingston, so they're debating about what they're gonna do at this point in time, because again, if you're a junior, it's a pretty crappy situation, and a lot of those people are like saying, we might just spend the 1 year and just go to Silver Lake,
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that stinks for the school system is the enrollment numbers based off of October from the previous year. So
Right.
if we have an influx of students that come in,
Yeah.
it's not based on those kids. I don't think it's actually too many kids.
Yeah, I was thinking it's probably sometime between 10 and 20, 25 max.
Yeah. And then, have you guys talked about the Chapter 70 funding? Not funding?
Yeah.
Mm-mm. No, we're handling, we've gotten through a lot of the department heads that we've been able to meet early on. But, Linda was kind enough to set us up with the Tri-Town meeting, and I think you all were on the last round of emails about that. I don't think, Kingston can send the chair, Pembroke, Plimpton, sorry,
Can't
cannot send the chair, but may
'cause
send town admin or, yeah.
they're having their own meeting that night.
Yeah, so ideally, we'll still have representation from all 3 towns, if not all 3 FinComs.
I haven't seen the official assessment numbers yet, I just did my own spreadsheet.
Mhm.
So there is a huge shift in the minimum contribution of like $350,000 to Kingston.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not gonna be that total increased spending falling on the enrollment portion. So I don't think the number is gonna be more than 150 for Halifax for the assessment.
Are you still putting in an article for the middle school resource officer?
I was gonna ask if you guys would allow a separate subline listed on the agenda, on the Article 5, or wherever it is, as a separate line under education.
But not in your operating budget?
Yeah, it's not, I don't have the votes to put it in there.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm misrepresenting our conversation from last year, for those of you who were on, let me know. But we had a few objections to it. I think one was not having any data behind the need for that particular position, which I don't know if that's been rectified.
So at the meeting that we had, the joint meeting, everybody came away and said that the need was there. It was just a funding issue.
And philosophically, especially at the point where we've got other requests for new positions, to not fold it into the operating budget. And I understand there were conversations about the structure and how that position would be funded, but I have not heard yet from, for example, Chief Shavs that he's been included on conversations about restructuring the funding. And I know for me personally, my objection to not having it in the operating budget would still stand, even if it were made a subline of article or of the 5th article. Thank you.
I understand the objection. Chief Jay doesn't want it in his police line. I understand that.
Right.
So I talked to him about that. The only thing I can recommend is putting it in as a line in the education so you see the spending. Because Plimpton's funding it outside, Kingston's funding it outside.
But when we met last year though, Gordon, the reason why we agreed to go that route to begin with was because Kingston had said they already finalized their budget. And
Yeah.
so we agreed on principle to go do that 1 year last year as an article on the understanding that it'll be rolled into the operating budget this year.
All I can tell you is that it's outside, their full-time officer is outside the budget.
And that position is the school committee's position?
No, it's the police. It's the police position. So the police are funding,
Why-
the Kingston Police are funding it as Kingston Police
Just need your
Officer.
signature on
within the Kingston
one of those
Police
lines on
budget.
each. There's 3 copies, you just have to sign 3 times on one of those lines.
Okay.
So just sign your name
So Flint
on
is
that line,
funding it
and then just do it
as
on the other 2
an
copies.
article. If you put it in as a subline or as an article, it accomplishes the same thing.
But it still means that if it's not voted
It's
up
not-
again at next year's annual, we don't fund it anymore.
Say that again?
That means that if you're still putting it as a subline of an article, that
Yeah.
means that we would have to vote on it again at the next year's annual, right?
Yeah.
As an article. Yeah.
And what do you give, you guys, you give the town control.
But it also, so we've had other, and I'm not arguing with you personally, I'm just saying like devil's advocate. We've had other folks that have come in now with multiple year asks or asking more than once for new positions that they can show the justification for, and they've provided a budget analysis for, and we have to turn them away. Because our line has been, if we can't grant everyone that opportunity, then we haven't granted it to anybody. And you know, the departments that have come to us again this year with repeat asks, that was one of the, again, the philosophical reasons we said no, was because if it were just folded in the operating budget and the school committee was able to make the argument for it, but at the point where we're turning away other departments, we can't hold one up
So
over everybody
I can
else.
tell you that we can vote it into the operating budget, but we're not gonna lower it, we're just gonna add it. It's not gonna be, you're not gonna.
Then you're not providing a level service budget.
It's not a level service,
It's
it's
not
asking,
in a-
it's asking for an increase in service.
Yeah,
It already is an increase in service, because they're asking for the new teacher.
Yeah.
So that's already an increase.
right.
which is
And
fine.
last year we asked for level service too, but we were mindful that certain things needed to be upgraded, a lot of the tech.
Yeah, so like with the, at least with the second teacher for the program for vocational, for the nursing, we've all known for multiple years
Mhm.
that you're gonna have to add that position.
Yeah, but we,
So the return on that is you're gonna get chapter 74 funding
Mhm.
to probably cover 75% of that
Mhm.
cost. And we are ahead of the game in the filings that I saw from January, so hopefully by May, we should know whether or not the funding is gonna be definitely there for June.
But still, from the town's perspective, if other people have made completely valid arguments as to why they need to add positions, or if we talk about regrading positions, then I don't see how this doesn't separate the request of Silver Lake from everyone else and allow them priority.
I get that, but I can.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm
ask
not-
to roll it into the budget.
Yeah.
Kingston, if we roll it into the budget, you're gonna add the full-time Kingston guy that's already being there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna end up costing the town more money. Because we're gonna end up paying for a portion of the full-time guy as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's the full-time guy's salary?
I don't know, 60?
Right, so the resource officer's 36, right? So let's assume the full-time is twice that.
72,
It's 108, we're paying what percentage?
33,
33, so one,
so 35 to 37.
yeah, so we end up saving a couple pennies. And all 3 towns are sharing the cost of both.
And
both
moreover,
positions.
moreover, it's not gonna have to be renewed at the annual town meeting through an article vote. And then leave us on the hook for unemployment compensation if it doesn't, right?
Mhm.
Well, no, there's gonna be no, there would be none. Because then what's happening is that Silver Lake has to write the intermunicipal agreement
Mm.
with the Kingston Police Department
Mm.
and pass the funds through.
Mm.
It's really just a pass-through. So whether or not you put it within the town's budget
Mhm.
or you put it in Silver Lake, the money's really not being spent by Silver Lake.
Mhm.
So the only reason why I said if you put it as a subline, at least then it's captured as it's being spent on the education.
But it still doesn't resolve the operating budget. And
I
like,
can tell you, I've
Yeah.
been asking to trim, and we're looking at cutting 5 positions to try to
Yeah.
get the number down.
Yeah.
So we're actively working on it, but
Yeah.
I think the need, and from that meeting that everybody went to, the need is there for the position. So I don't think the need is the conversation anymore, it's
Yeah, you're gonna have more people saying there's a need after Friday too, so.
Right, so if there's a need, then you've put something in your operating budget, which was the same conversation we had last year, which is if this is something that people feel is a priority and then it's necessary, then it goes in your operating budget, so it's,
I
that we're-
get that aspect, but it's not really Silver Lake's operating budget, it's the town of Kingston's operating budget, and we're being asked to fund that portion of that officer. So it's not Silver Lake's operating budget.
Like,
It's
who
the
makes the
Kingston's-
decision whether the officer exists?
The Kingston Police Department.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
I mean, you could make the argument that Kingston should pay for all of it too, I guess, if you wanted to, but
well, no, but I mean, if Silver Lake said we don't want somebody there, would they still have that person?
Silver Lake made the argument. I assume the Kingston Police can put the officer in there, I don't know the answer to that, Charlie. I mean, if we had a SRO here, could the chief overrule that for safety issues? Maybe? I mean,
No.
I would think if there's a safety issue and the police chief said, I'm putting a guy there, you're not gonna be able to say no. It's like the fire department, if they wanted to put, you know, the call guys on, because the fire alarm system isn't working.
Except, of course, at least with both chiefs, those chiefs do end up reporting to the board of selectmen. So ultimately, even under a strong chief situation in Kingston, I don't know if it's a strong chief or weak chief, the board of selectmen said otherwise, or if the town said otherwise, they wouldn't have the funding for it. And I don't see necessarily, well, and I don't know how the people of Kingston would vote if they said, if the school simply said, no, we're not interested in having an officer.
I don't know if we need to do the hypothetical, because I think the school wants,
Yeah, I agree.
and in the public safety arena right now. I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to come up with a solution so it would still count towards the education spending by funding it. So, I mean, if you tell me I should get 10 signatures, put an article in, if the school committee didn't already do that, then we get the 10 signatures and put an
Well,
article.
we've got the
Oh,
article
okay.
from Silver, Joyce sent it in months ago.
Okay. It's just gonna have to. I get the philosophical issue, but the issue comes down to is, I'm only one vote on Silver Lake. I can ask to add it, and we're gonna just increase above what last year's, because we're gonna be pulling in
mhm,
the level service part of Kingston's police officer into the budget.
mhm.
That was discussed, but that should also be rolled into.
It should be.
It was discussed last year,
I think that
that meeting.
the structure of the funding conversation is now happening that should have happened a year or two ago, and we had this big, like almost exactly a year ago, we're having the same arguments, but now there's been sort of a little bit of movement forward on the structure of the financing, but not much, and it looks like old wine in a new bottle to me,
Well,
to be honest.
I mean, I don't care either way, I want the officer in there, and that's my goal. So if you're telling me that you're not gonna support the budget because the officer isn't in there, I can move to put the officer in, but I think where we are in the budget process, the school department would be looking to be held harmless for that position and just add above and not cut. I don't think you're gonna see, because the budget isn't paid for by Kingston's, because the budget is paid for by Kingston's police officer, it's not within the budget, but the service is there.
Hmm.
So, to add that portion into the budget, I think they need to be held harmless for that portion. I think that's the only way it would be agreed to, then it would be an intermunicipal agreement between Silver Lake and Kingston.
I prefer to get it in an education budget than over an article, because we should get credit for it that way. It's gonna pass this year.
So if you put it as a sub-article, you get credit for the spend.
Right, that's what I was thinking. It's gonna pass this
You
year.
would get credit for it anyways, Gordon. Putting it as a line item does not make it more.
Okay,
It goes towards school funding
okay.
in there.
The only thing doesn't is health insurance, right?
But the whole thing is, are we paying overtime rates for this officer?
Mhm.
That's what was
I
happening
think that
last
was the
year.
problem,
Yeah.
part
Yeah, and I think that's what they're, it's the only way to do it, because they're not doing a full-time officer.
But that doesn't make sense.
But that, again, I agree with all these issues, but it's not our call.
Right. But see, if it was in the school budget, then it could be.
No, it still wouldn't be our
No.
call, because we're not asking for enough money for two full-time guys. It's asking us to pay for a service that
Can I
works.
ask you, just, I know that the town of Halifax has special police officers that we use. That way you don't have to pay overtime rates on some things. Could they not do
So
that? Or is that their union
I kind of
thing? or-
went down the line of the municipal agreement between all the Plymouth County Association to see if we could send somebody over to cover the shift, to cover the cost. And the Kingston Police Chief is sole responsibility for selecting an SRO. So it's up to him.
So we're at their mercy to pay
So-
the overtime.
Yep.
Who's obligated to fund it, or is Halifax?
Kingston.
Kingston's obligated, so if Halifax says no, or, and there needs to be an officer there, if there's a phone call, they need somebody to come in, Kingston has to pay for it.
Yeah, the general law states that the town that the school is located in has the responsibility.
Right, so that we call from last year.
Anybody else have any other questions?
And on that shared cost, you'll see an increase on shared cost from for the elementary school. You'll see this increased revenue for Silver Lake. Because those positions were added into the shared costs
Mhm.
that were solely covered by Silver Lake before.
Mhm.
So you'll see an increase for that. All right,
Yep.
thank you guys.
Thank you. Any other public participation? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:04.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.